Today's daf, Be'ezus Hashem, is daf Chof Aleph, and we will begin by the Mishnah. Ze Oime Ksav Yodei. It's very Oime Ksav Yodei. It's very straightforward daf over here. Just to recap over here, I'm just going to bring up this little thing over here, this little picture, and that is that we've learned so far that if, let's say, the loiva, the borrower, says this document is a fake, so there's really, we wouldn't believe the borrower to say that. You have a document with signed people on it, Adam on it, we should believe it's true. But the Rabbanan said that there was a lot of people were faking documents. So if the borrower says this document is a fake, I never borrowed this money, so then we have to ratify the document. So that then is only Rabbanan. So there's three ways to ratify the document. We learned is one way to ratify the document is that if you have two Adam coming to say testimony on each of the signatures, that they're real people that signed, and this is their signature, then that ratifies the document. Or the first way is, the first way was al yedei ha'edim hachasumim, which means that the Adam themselves, the guy that signed this document, says, I'm the one that signed the document, and I'll prove it to you. Here's my signature. Compare it. So then we believe it, even if he's just one person. And then the third way is, let's say nobody showed up to Bezdin, but we have another document that was ratified by Bezdin with the same signatures. So we compare the signatures from that ratified document to the document in question, and then we can say that that if it's the same, then that document in question is also ratified. So that's the Gemara over here. And let us begin. That was the Gemara. That was the topic we're discussing, and this is the topic of the Mishnah. But the Mishnah discusses like this: the aide that walks into Bezdin and he says that they're trying to ratify a document. So the guy that signed, one of the aidim that signed on the document, says, "This is my signature. I recognize my own handwriting." And the other signature is the handwriting of my friend. So you have two Eidim basically saying on each hand, one saying on his self, and one saying on his, and he's saying Eidus on his friend. And this one says Zek Sav Yodi Shel Chaveri. This is my handwriting, and this is the handwriting of my friend. We just began, Louis. So we have a document, and we're trying to ratify the document. So the guy that signed on the document says, this is my signature. I signed on the document. I'm a witness to the event, to this loan. And this is and not only is that my handwriting, but that's the handwriting of my friend. And the other one says, this is my handwriting, and that's the handwriting of my friend. So each one says testimony about his own handwriting, about his friend's handwriting. So basically, you have two witnesses per each signature. The man himself who wrote, plus his friend who's saying witness that that's his signature. Hare Elu ne'amanim. So then, Hare Elu ne'amanim, then we believe these people. Okay. New case in the Mishnah. This one says, one witness that signed on the document said, this is my handwriting. And the other witness that signed on the document says, this is my handwriting. So each one is saying their witness that that's their handwriting. So Rebbe says that's not enough because there's only one witness per signature. You have to get a third person to work with both of them. And he's going to say witness that he recognizes both signatures. So he's combines with the person who recognizes his own handwriting. So you have two on one signature, and then he combines with the other one that recognizes his own handwriting, and you have two on the other signature. That's Rebbe's chumrah. So you don't believe the guy himself coming in saying this is my handwriting. That's not enough. Chachamim say they don't have to combine and get another one. Each person is permitted is believed to say Zek Sav Yodi. That's my handwriting. Now, just to clarify, the Chachamim make perfect. The Rebbe makes perfect sense, and Chachamim make perfect sense. Rebbe says the reason why you need two Eidim on signatures is because what does ratification of a shtar mean? Ratification of a document means that you're saying that these people who signed on the document are true people. Well, to say any testimony, you need two people. So therefore, you need to have the guy himself who signed, plus an outside person to join him. Like you do, they have in the city. We do elevator inspections. It's not enough the elevator company. You have to have an outside person to witness the cat inspection. So same thing over here. You need the guy that wrote the document, the guy that signed his name, plus somebody else. So they both saying witnesses on the signature, because according to Rebbe, the purpose of ratifying a shtar is to authenticate the signature. But Chachamim say no. The point of ratifying a shtar is to confirm that a loan happened. So therefore, even if each one says this is my signature, but the underlying denominator, both of them, are saying that this loan happened because we signed on this document because the loan happened, even though I don't recognize my friend's signature. So the Chachamim say that's why it's enough, even if you have just one person that recognizes his own signature. So the Gemara begins, Kishetin Tzilayma, if you think about it, Kishetin Tzilayma, when you think about it, the Divrei Rebbe, according to Rebbe, we go, the reason is, everybody is saying testimony on the purpose of ratification of a shtar is to say testimony and authenticate the handwriting. So therefore you need two people, right? According to the Chachamim, they are saying testimony that the loan occurred. And that therefore, you don't need them to say testimony on their signatures. You just need a common denominator between the two people. And therefore, one is enough. Each one is enough to say testimony that this is my signature. So the Gemara says, Pshita, that's very simple. It's a very simple way that you explain the machlokes between Rebbe and the Chachamim. And probably I could have figured it out myself, says the Gemara. So the Gemara says, not true. Mahu Desema, I would have thought, Rebbe wasn't sure, and therefore he went strict over here. Rebbe said, he wasn't sure. When you ratify a shtar, is the point to say testimony on the signatures that they're authentic signatures, they're authentic people, or they're saying testimony on that the event, the loan happened. So therefore, he went strict and said you're required to have an irregular authentication, regular ratification of a shtar. You need two people: the guy himself who signed, plus an outside witness to join him to say testimony on his own signature. But there is a kula involved. Now, what's this kula? So it comes out there'll be a case where the Chachamim are going to be more strict and Rebbe is going to be lenient. And here's one point. When two people say testimony on something, each one, you need both of them, and each one is doing 50% of the act. That's the point. They're doing 50% of the entire testimony. But what happens like this? According to this case, think about this. Let's say one of the person who signed on the shtar died. So according to the Chachamim, liboya shnayim min hashuk lahoyet olav. You'll need two people from the street to say testimony on the friend, that deceased person that died, his signature. Why? Why can't you say that the guy himself will say testimony on his own signature, and then find one other person that recognizes his friend's signature, and he'll join up with that friend, with that person, and say testimony on the friend's signature. So he's doing 50% by saying Adis on his own signature, plus joining with an outside party, with an outside person to say testimony on the deceased, his deceased friend's signature. So it comes out that he's doing 75% of the testimony. And the Torah says that you could only do 50% of the testimony, and you have to leave 50% for the Eidim. So the mischad b'nei l'boy shnayim min hashuk lo'irav. You need two from the street to say testimony on the deceased man's signature. Then Cain, if you're going to let the one that's still alive, the Eid that's still alive, say testimony on his own signature, plus join up with one other person to say testimony on his friend's signature, then 3/4 of this loan is happening because of one person. A quarter minus a quarter, 100% minus a quarter. So 75% of the money is being taken out on the testimony of one person. So therefore, you would require two from the street. So, but if you learned like Rebbe, by the way, if you learned like Rebbe, you wouldn't need two from the street to say testimony on the deceased man's, because even for your own signature, you need two. So you'll have that same person say testimony and join you saying your own signature, authenticating your own signature, and then you'll join up to authenticate your friend's signature. So you're responsible. The aide that's still alive is only responsible for 50% of the testimony. So according to Rebbe, you'll need only one person from the street, not two people from the street. So if you don't know what Rebbe holds, then perhaps in the opposite case, Rebbe would go strict in both scenarios. He would require you to have two Eidim on each signature, and in this case, when one of them died, he will require you to have two from the street to say Eidis on the testimony on the signature of the deceased person, like the Rabbanim. So, because Rebbe, we don't know what he holds. Kamash Malan, that's why I'm telling you, the Rebbe Rebbe was confident in his opinion that the reason we ratify a shtar is to say testimony on the signature, to authenticate that real people signing that signature, not to say that the loan happened. We're authenticating signatures. So bein lekula, whether something a kula happens, bein lechuma, when something strict has to happen. The Amar Rabbi Yehuda said in the name of Rav, Shnayim hachusumin al hashtar. If you have two people signing on a shtar, umeis echem, exactly our scenario. If you have two people signed on a document and one of them died, one of the witnesses died, so tzrichim, according to the Rabbanim, tzrichim shnayim in hashuk loyd olav. You're going to need two separate people from the street to say testimony on the deceased aide's signature, according to the Chachamim. But according to Rebbe, you'll need one person, and the man himself who's saying testimony on his own signature, because he's using the same guy to say testimony on his own signature, can join up with that same guy to say testimony on the deceased man's signature. So Bezu, in that scenario, Rebbe Lekula, Rebbe will be easy, Rabbanan Lechumra and Rabbanan is strict. Now, the Gemara says one last question. The Gemara asks a question. Let's say for the deceased man's signature, you can't find two people who recognize the signature. You only found one person to recognize the signature. According to Chachamim, you're going to need two people to recognize the signature. Otherwise, you run into the problem of that one person. If he's saying testimony on his own signature, and plus 25% half on his friend's signature, then 75% of the testimony on this document is based on one person. So what should you do in that case? If you can only find one person that recognizes the deceased man's signature. Amar Abaya says, so the aide that's still alive, he should write Lichtev Chesimis Yodei Achaspa. He should write his own signature on a piece of pottery, which is easily destroyed. V'shadulei bebeidina, and he shows it to the court, and the court recognizes that handwriting. They learn his handwriting, and therefore umachzik lebeidina, and they ratify the document by recognizing that this is his signature, and they ratify at least one signature in the document. So it's not based on his testimony. It's basically the judges themselves are recognizing that this is an authentic signature of a real person. We won't need him. He doesn't have to verbally say, this is my handwriting. He just quietly writes his handwriting on a piece of pottery and therefore hands it to Bezdin. Bezdin says, oh, this is your handwriting. And they do handwriting analysis. And Bezdin says, this handwriting is similar to the handwriting in the document, so it must be a real person. So the judges themselves validated one of the signatures. So we didn't need him to verbally testify it's his signatures. And therefore, then he's still available to go say testimony on the deceased man's signature because we don't need him in his own signature. And therefore, he's only involved in, like, say, 25% of this document. Now the Gemara just gives you advice on identity theft. If you shouldn't write your signature only on a pottery, which is easily destroyed. V'dafka chaspa, just write your handwriting, or write your signature on a piece of pottery. Ava magil terloi, but on a cloth, on a real formal parchment, don't write your handwriting. Don't sign your name. Why? Even though the whole purpose of you signing your name is to give it to the court, so they learn your signature. because Dilma Meshkach they throw it in the garbage, and they'll Meshkach Ilnish the Mali. Somebody who is not a the wrong person will find that document with your signature, and they'll have a field day because it's written on the bottom of a piece of paper. Because of ilo mind the boya, he'll write on top of it whatever he wants. He'll say that so and so owes me money, and you signed your name, even though it's not a real document because you don't have witnesses. But he'll write that you owe him money. But now we learned in the Brishna, if someone brings a document which has the handwriting of the borrower stating that I owe the so-and-so money, it's a valid document that you can collect, not from liened properties. You can't put a lien on a property, but free and clear properties and possessions you can collect from. So therefore, be careful with your signature and don't throw it in the garbage, because people will find it and do crazy things with it. Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Shmuel. Rav Yehuda said the name of Shmuel. We learned in our Mishnah. Bottom line is, we learned in our Mishnah basically what we just learned, that this is the machlekes on the screen. Each one saying this is my handwriting and this is my handwriting. Each one only testified about their own ksav yad. Rebbe says you need to get a third witness, because it's not enough each one coming individually saying this is their handwriting. And Rebbe Chachamim says, no, everyone is believed, even though he's only saying testimony and recognizes his own handwriting, and he's not talking about his friends. So it will still be a good ratification of the shtar. So it comes along the Gemara and says in the name of Shmuel, halacha k'divrei Chachamim. The halacha is like the Chachamim. Shita. Of course, you paskin like the Chachamim. Yachid v'rabim, halacha k'rabim. When you have an argument between a Yachid, which is an individual, Rebbe, against the Chachamim, the majority, you go after the majority. So the Gemara says, Ma'u d'seima, I would have thought, halacha k'Rebbe mechaber, when Rebbe has an argument against another colleague, so we always paskin like Rebbe. Va'afilu mechaberah. And I would think that Rebbe is so powerful in his psak that even if the majority argue against him, we would paskin like Rebbe. Shmuel teaches us that no, the halacha is like the Chachamim, and in this Mishnah we're not going to paskin like Rebbe. So Gemara says, Amalei, this Nachnad Chad, you'll see that. Amalei Rav Chinana bar Chia Rav Yehuda. Rav Chinana bar Chia said to Rav Yehuda. So that's Nunches Chinana bar Chia. Or Ba'amila, some say it's Rav Huna bar Yehuda. So it's Huna bar Yehuda said to Rav Yehuda. So that's Nun Dalet, Huna bar Yehuda. And Va'amile and others say it's Rav Chia bar Yehuda. Chia bar Yehuda said to Rav Yehuda. Anyway, somebody's talking to Rav Yehuda and he's asking a question. Umi Amar Shmuel Hachi. Did Shmuel paskin like that Chachamim, that everyone, you all need one person to say testimony about his own signature, and that could ratify a document. V'ahu shtara, there was this document, the Nafik Medina de Bar Shmuel, that went out of the Bezdin of Bar Shmuel, and they required, and Shmuel required not only the guy himself to say testimony about his own signature, but Shmuel required that he has to have a witness, the other witness say testimony about his signature. So he required two people to say testimony per each signature. That's not like the Chachamim. And it was written, this ratification of a shtar had its own written, and Rav Onan bar Chia, it says Rav Onan bar Chia came. Rav Onan said testimony on his own handwriting. And somebody else joined with Rav Onan to say testimony about Rav Onan's handwriting. Umani Rav Chanan bar Abba, Rav Chanan bar Abba. So it's Rav Chanan say testimony about Rav Onan's signature. And Rav Chanan bar Abba, Umani Rav Onan bar Chia. And Rav Chanan returned the favor, and he said testimony. And Rav Onan returned the favor. Rav Chanan said testimony about his own handwriting, and Rav Onan joined Rav Chanan to say testimony about Rav Chanan's handwriting. So you had each one was saying edis not only about themselves, but they're both saying edis about their friend's signature. And Ashirinu v'Karminu K'Dechazi. And Shmuel wrote, this is the proper way to ratify this document. So, but if you paskin like the Chachamim, you wouldn't require that. You would require each one to say testimony about their own signature, and you don't need them to say testimony about their friend's signature. And here you see in Shmuel in practice paskin like Rebbe. Amalei, so Rabbi Yehuda answered, that was a one-time case. Ahu shtar the Yasmiham. It was a document that belonged to orphans. The Shmuel, and Shmuel was very concerned, Lebezin Toyim, that if they're going to bring this document to another court, that other court is going to make a mistake, thinking that you paskin like Rabbi. The Sava Shmuel, Dimla Ika Desvirle, maybe there's another courthouse that holds halacha karebi mechavera v'loy mechavera, or vaha, and most times you paskin like Rabbi, and you don't paskin like the majority. You don't paskin like the majority, and not like Rebbe. Well, but this will be the exception. Afila mechaberov, even against the majority, you would paskin like Rebbe. So Shmuel was concerned that if this document ever made it into another court, maybe the other court will say that it's not a valid document because it was ratified only according to the opinion of Rebbe, and therefore. So therefore, Shmuel went over and beyond. Sava Avad Ravcha, I'll go over and beyond and make sure it was done even according to Rebbe. So the orphan shouldn't lose out, shouldn't disqualify a document for no apparent reason. So Shmuel went strict and made this document kosher even according to Rebbe. So the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Yehuda Shmuel. Rabbi Yehuda said in Shmuel, this is very important. When they ratify a document, they don't put a stamp on the document. What they do is they write another piece of paper called a henpik, and that says that we are a court and 3 people, and we're signing that this document is ratified by us. We know that the signatures on the document is kosher. So what happens? Let's say they get to another court, and the borrower says, not only is the document a falsity, but the henpik, the kashrus certification by the dayanim is also false. So Amar Yehuda Amar Shmuel said, all you need is one witness to say aid about the document, the dayan, and one judge to say testimony about that he signed on the ratification document. And you combine mitzdarf, and you combine that together to ratify the whole thing and say that the loan actually took place and the borrower has to pay back. So that is a very intelligent solution. You don't need that 2 aidim, each aid should come to say aid, or every dayan that's on the henpik should come and say aid. All you need is one aid on the document saying I signed. One dayan said I signed the ratification document. Combined together, and that puts the end to the whole thing, and the borrower has to pay. Amar Rabba questioned that. My malyusi, that's not a good decision. My dekomaset saada loy komasat dayona. What the aid is saying, the guy who signed on the original document, his testimony is that the loan took place. But that's not what the judge is saying. What the judge actually signing on the henpik is saying that the person that signed on the document is an authentic person. So each one is, so then he's not saying the same thing of what the judge is saying. Whatever the judge is saying is not the witness saying. They're both saying 2 different things. So how could you combine them? Allah, and this was said over, Rabbi Yehuda said in the name of Shmuel. Rami Bar Yecheskel, who is the brother of Rabbi Yehuda. This is Rabbi Yehuda Bar Yecheskel. The brother said, whenever my brother Yehuda, who considers himself a student of Shmuel, says a general rule, you don't pay attention to that. He's not so careful in repeating things correctly. And Rav is correct. You can't combine the aid on the document, the judge on the henpik to validate a situation over here. Tomorrow we go to Amid Beis. Ikle Rav Nai Achud Rav Chi Bar Abba Lemizben Shumshi. And this is a story. Rav Nai, the brother of Rav Chi Bar Abba, came to buy sesame seeds. Now, why is it necessary to know he was purchasing sesame seeds? Because the whole point is he's going to say over a piece of Torah. I guess there's health benefits to sesame seeds. Anyway, Rav Nai said, Amar Shmuel said, he also said the same thing. Aid v'dayan mitzdarfen, an aid and a dayan could be combined. Amar Ameimer. So Ameimer said that Ameimer is the grandson of Rami Bar Rami Bar Chama. Okay, This is terrific. It makes perfect sense. An aid and a dayan could be combined. So we just said, Amalei Rav Ashi Lameima, so Rav Ashi said to Ameima that you're trying to say what your grandfather, Rami Bar Chama, praised this statement. So you're saying the same thing as your maternal grandfather. But that's not true. But you don't have to follow him. Since your grandfather, Rami Bar Chama, praised this statement of Eid V'dayim Mitzdarfen, you're also going to praise that statement. In other words, you think that's a correct statement? Rava refuted the whole statement. It says it makes no sense because the aid is testifying about a signature, and his point is to say that the loan took place. The dayan is only testifying that the signatures are authentic. They're each saying two different testimonies. How could you combine them to ratify the whole process over here? So it wouldn't work. The Gemara continues. Rav Safra bar Abba, Rav Yitzchak bar Shmuel bar Masa, Rav Huna. And so this was all said in the name of Rav Huna. Amrilay, and some people say, Amar Rav Huna, Amar Rav. Rav Huna simply said this statement in the name of Rav. What's the statement? Anu halacha. Shloisha sheyash l'kayim sashtar. You see what a process it was to authenticate a loan document. Three judges sat down to ratify a document. Okay, and they have to, what are they saying? They're going to write this henpick, which is a ratification, kosher certification that this document is fine. But shnayim makirim chasim es yedei egidem. Two of them recognize the signatures of the witnesses of the document. The echad einem aker, and one of the dayanim, one of the judges, doesn't recognize the signature of the witnesses on the document. So at shaloi chasmu, before they signed the kosher certification, me'idim b'fanav v'chaisim. Two of the judges say testimony to the one remaining judge that never recognizes the signature, that the signatures are authentic. Then they turn around and all three sign the kosher certification that they verified the signatures of that document. But if the two of them signed on the document and they signed on the kosher certification, then they can't say testimony to the third guy, and now the third guy should sign. Because what does the kosher certification say? What does this henpick say? That we had three judges look into the signatures and we all recognize the signatures and they're real people. So if two people signed on that prior to them testifying to the third guy, they are signing on something that's a lie. Because when they signed, the third guy didn't recognize the signatures. So therefore, once they sign, they should rip up the whole certification, because when they signed, it was written at a time that what's written in that document wasn't true. You have to be so careful to sign on something that when you sign, it already happened and it is 100% true. So the Rava says, not only the Gemara asks the question, just signing is the problem? Mi kasminin, do you write the whole certification? Hi, asharta de dayana. This ratification, this kosher certification that's written by judges, the nichtav bekami de nahavi sama, the nahavi ksadi akasimis yadai, that's written prior to witnesses verifying the signatures. Let's say you have three judges. They don't know anything about the signatures. And they write up the kosher certification. They didn't sign it yet. And they're waiting for other people to authenticate, to say testimony in front of them about the document, about the signatures. But the certification was already written up prior. So then psula, that's a disqualified certification. The mischaze kishikra, it looks like a lie because you're writing it up at a time. You wrote it up at a time when the judges had no idea that these signatures are valid. And this kosher certification actually states, at least in the main part, that we are three judges, and even prior to signing, we recognize these signatures that they're authentic. So, therefore, don't even write up the whole certification. Wait till everybody is clear and knows the signatures or had testimony in front of them about the signatures, and then you can write the kosher certification. You have to say, prior to writing up the certification, the two judges who recognize the signatures could say testimony to the third one regarding the signature, and then they could write it up and sign it. But But if they wrote up this certification prior to them testing, they don't say testimony in front of them, because this kosher certification is invalid, and certainly they don't sign on such a such a certification. So the Gemara says two more points. Shma min atlas. From this story, from this teaching, you've learned three halachas. First of all, you learn Shema Mina Eid Nasa Dayan. That's a very interesting thing, that an aid could turn around and become a dayan, because the two of the judges are actually saying testimony to the third judge that does not recognize the signature. Then they turn around, the two judges now become the judges. Now they're sitting on a bench. So a witness can turn around and become the judge. Ushmamina, you see from here, Dayanim Hamakin and Chasimasi they Aiden, Ein and Srichel and Bifneim. The two judges themselves, they didn't need an extra people to say testimony about the signatures, because they recognize the signatures themselves. They're working many years in the courthouse. They recognize these signatures. So they don't need an extra pair of people to say testimony for themselves. So that's what you see from that. If the judges recognize the handwriting, you don't need another pair of Aiden. Ushma mina, and you also hear Dayanim she'ein makirin chasim sidei Aiden tzriich lahoy b'fnei kol echad ve'echad. The Dayanim that don't know the Aiden, they don't recognize. Each one of them has to be aware and had testimony that the signature is valid. In other words, you have three Dayanim who have no idea about the signatures. You have two Eidim saying testimony. They have to say testimony to each one of the judges. You can't say, two of the judges recognize the signature, so that should be enough to write up a certification. No. You have to say testimony to each one of the judges, so each judge heard two witnesses verifying signatures, and only then can you write the certification. So the Maskif Rav Ashi asked one question on this. I hear that the teaching that a witness could turn into a judge, that you certainly hear, because two of the judges are, after they say testimony, they become judges to sign on the certification. That the Dayanim that recognize their own signatures, they don't need anybody to say testimony before them. I would say that if three judges all recognize the signatures, you would still need Aiden to say testimony in front of them, even if all three recognizes. Over here, you didn't need that. You didn't need an extra Aiden from the outside world, because you already have two people, two of the judges, who before becoming judges are witnesses. They are saying testimony. So you have some form of testimony being done over here. But in a case where all three judges know the signatures and you're going to have no testimony in front of them, they can't write the kosher certification. They would need another two people to come to say, recognize the signatures before they can write the certification. The Dayanim, and one more thing, the Dayanim she'ein makirin chasimasi they Eiden tzrichim lahoyd b'fnei kol echad ve'echad. We can't have that two of the judges recognize the signatures and one doesn't. You need all three of them to know, to have at least knowledge that these signatures are authentic. So I'm going to say that's not true. You don't see that from here. I will tell you, you don't need to. Over here it's different, because you don't have any testimony at all. In other words, here, if two of the judges know two of the judges know the handwriting, if you're not requiring them to say testimony to the third judge, then nobody said testimony. That's why we require them to say testimony to the third judge. But let's say all three didn't know the handwriting, and you had two outside people say testimony. Maybe it's enough that the two people say testimony to two of the judges, and once two of the judges know that their authentic handwriting, they don't need to say testimony to the third judge. He could just sign that my two friends, my two other colleague judges heard testimony, and I'm going along with it. No, that's a possibility. So that's what the Gemara said. Two out of the three chidushim, novelties, you could refute, but the one that you can't refute from this story is Eid Nasadayim. That means that witnesses can now turn around to become a judge. So one last final question that the Gemara asks a question. You're telling me that an aid could become a dayan. Remember this story in in Rosh Hashanah. Here's the picture. You have three judges. They saw the new moon, right? So they could say, Mekudesh, 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 right? No, the Mishnah says that you take one of the judges, he becomes the judge. You get two people who didn't see the new moon. They sit next to that person. And the two original judges, they cannot become judges anymore. They'll be witnesses, and they'll say testimony in front of the three judges. One is their friend that saw the moon with them, and two strange people. Because once you're a witness, you can't turn around to become a dayan. So that's the Gemara's question. How come in Rosh Hashanah we don't say Eid Nasa Dayan? Yosef Rab Abba v'kamala hashmaitza the Eid Nasa Dayan. Rab Abba said over this teaching that a witness could turn around and become a judge. So in any case, he can say a witness, after he finishes his testimony, he could sit behind the bench. So Rav Safra asked Rab Abba, if you have three people seeing the new moon and they themselves form a bezdin, two of them should become witnesses. You take two of them should become witnesses, and that two of them become witnesses, and then you take two other people and they sit as judges next to the remaining person that also saw the moon. And the two judges who can now not be judges, they can only be witnesses, say testimony in front of them, and then collectively the Yomim Mekudesh Mekudesh, and then you say Mekudesh Chaydish Mekudesh. The reason why you need three people to say, you need three people as a judge, as a valid, court, is because one person cannot be the judge alone, especially to be Mekadesh the Chaydish, to sanctify the month, you need three people. Now, but the point is, if you think the Eid Nasadayim, that a witness could turn around and become the judge, why do you need such a bother? In other words, why do you have to bring two strange people to join the third judge to be part of the bench? Let them first say testimony to the third person, to the one remaining judge, and then turn around and sit on the bench and all join together and be Mekadesh. So you don't have to bring strange people. So why by Kiddush HaChodesh you don't say Ein Eid Nasa Dayan? Amalei. So this was Rav Safra asking Rab Abba. So Rab Abba answered, Afli didi kashli. I had this difficulty too. Ushilte Rav Yitzchak bar Shmuel bar Matzah. I asked Rav Yitzchak bar Shmuel bar Marsa, and Rav Yitzchak asked it Rav Huna. Rav Huna l'chia bar Av, l'chia bar Av l'Rav. In other words, that no one really could give you a valid answer why the Mishnah Rosh Hashanah says that it implies Ein Eid Nasa Dayan. And they told us, Rav told us, the fact that you need testimony for Kiddush HaChodesh is Madai. And when the whole concept of Kiddush HaChodesh is Daraisa, therefore you need valid witnesses, and those witnesses cannot turn around and become part of the bench of the judges. The Kiyam Shtaris the Rabbanan, that's the final thing. To ratify a Shol Shtar is midrabanan, because if a borrower says, "Oh, this document is fake," min haTorah, we don't listen to him. The whole ratification process that you need, this whole story that would discuss the whole entire daf, is only drabanan anyway. So once it's drabanan, they can say that somebody who's the witness can also turn around and become the judge to sign on the kosher certification of the document. Okay.